Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are with Alpine Legal Services and Senior Matters today, presenting on civil justice for seniors from Parachute to Aspen. A few notes on our presentation today. This is being translated into Spanish in real time. If you'd prefer to listen to it in Spanish, make sure you go to your menu screen on the bottom right. Look for the gridded globe icon and pick the language of your preference. If you get any feedback, make sure you select the language to mute the original audio. We are also using the Q&A function. If you have any questions for our panelists today, make sure you use that Q&A so that we can get to that question at an appropriate time. Our chat is open now. If you have any questions, comments, or any technical issues, please communicate with me through the chat and we'll get you fixed up as soon as we get to it. Without further ado, I'll introduce Senior Matters and they'll take it from here. Thank you so much.
Ron, I'm the chair of Senior Matters, and I'm going to introduce Jenny Weary so I could tell you, where she went to law school and jobs she's had and things like that. But really what I want to tell you is that if I was in trouble, I would want her to be my lawyer. And I don't really even know if she's a good lawyer, but I know that she's a good person because I know her personally. And that's why I would want her to be my lawyer. I would really trust her. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny and we'll hear about
Well, Ron, that's just about the nicest thing anybody's ever told me. So I'm a bit speechless. Thank you very much. Definitely a very nice introduction. I am Jenny Weary. I'm the director of Alpine Legal Services, and I'm so thankful to be here today. I'm thankful that this is being recorded and that we can share it after today in English and in Spanish. I am a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for almost 20 years. Most of that time was spent in Texas, but I moved to Colorado with my 3 boys and my husband, who's a history teacher at Glenwood Springs High School. We moved to Carbondale in 2018, and that's when I started working for Alpine Legal Services, and it's been really the best job I've ever had. So I'm not a senior, so to speak on senior matters, well, I do live in Carbondale, so I hope to one day become I hope to be lucky to be a senior in Carbondale in the next 10 years. And so I'm grateful to be speaking with you all because I'm very passionate about senior issues. And so I want to be clear that although I'm not a senior, I'm a daughter of a senior, and I participated. Unfortunately, I had to engage with the hospice system when my father was passing in 2019. My mother and father-in-law are both seniors. So I work with seniors every day. So I have a lot of thoughts on what we're seeing in terms of civil justice for seniors from Parachute to Aspen. So I'm just going to jump right into this presentation. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. So here we go, and I hope my cursor works here to get to the next slide. There we go. So agenda for today, we're going to talk a bit about Alpine Legal Services, the area that we cover, the services we provide, some issues that we're seeing in terms of civil justice for seniors in our area, resources, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So this is really meant to be an overview. This is not going to be a discussion of any particular legal issue, but I hope we can make this a regular recurring series so that we can delve into those issues that are most important for seniors at this time, so we can cover cover specifics at a future time. So this is meant to be an overview of concerns and issues that we're seeing, some hope for the future, and some resources. So a little history of Alpine Legal Services. In 1987, Roaring Fork Legal Services was formed in Aspen. And then in 1994, Garfield County Legal Services started in Glenwood Springs, and the two merged in 2004. to become Alpine Legal Services. Our mission is to ensure access to justice by providing quality legal services that protect and advance fundamental legal rights. We're undergoing some strategic planning this year. Our mission might change, but until then, it's a pretty good one. The area we cover is Parachute to Aspen, so that encompasses the 9th Judicial District and a portion of the 5th Judicial District. That also crosses over 3 counties, as you know, Garfield, Western Eagle, and Pickens counties. We operate, when we do go to court, we operate out of the Garfield County Courthouse in Glenwood Springs, the Garfield County Associate Courthouse in Rifle. There's an Eagle County Court, sort of an associate court in Elgibel, the community center, and then, of course, the Pickens County Courthouse in Aspen. Big picture, Alpine Legal Services strives to ensure access to justice for survivors of crime, seniors 60 and older, and low-income residents within our area. Basic overview of our case flow. People come in usually by calling our main number, 945-8858, or by sending us an email to one of our staff. And then we are working on an online referral form as well, but there's an intake screening process. And then we do a consultation and assessment if the individual is eligible for our services. And in this for purposes of the services that we provide from Parachute to Aspen for senior legal aid, if you're 60 or older, typically there will be a consult and assessment unless there's a conflict of interest or unless it encompasses an area of law in which we do not have legal expertise. So an example of that would be like a complex probate matter. So like a complex estate matter. That would be a situation where we would want to immediately move to the referral phase. So if we do consult and assess the case, from there, we'll either end up representing that person directly or supporting them in some other way, which we'll discuss later, or referring them to a resource that is best for their legal situation. So common services, as I mentioned, consultation and advice. A lot of times people just need to voice the situation, identify what their legal issue really is, and be given some peace of mind in terms of, what their legal options are. Oftentimes people aren't really ready to make a decision on what they're going to do. They just want to know their options, and knowing options can provide an incredible amount of peace and comfort for someone who's dealing with a lot of stress. And I know that anyone on this webinar who's ever dealt with an unresolved legal issue knows that there's very few things that are more stressful. So oftentimes we are referring seniors to the right place. So we want to make sure that if we can't provide the service that is needed, we want to make sure you're in touch with the right resource. Oftentimes with advocacy, we are able to resolve an issue by making a phone call or sending a letter on behalf of a senior who's in need of help. An instance is, an example of that, a common example of that is if someone is being scammed or preyed upon by a fraudulent bill collector. We can pretty much nip that in the bud sometimes by sending a letter or making a phone call from a lawyer's office that oftentimes will stop those letters and phone calls from coming, assuming it's not a legitimate debt. So, and then we often provide direct representation in situations where a protection order might be needed, a civil protection order when there's harassment or abuse going on, a guardianship or conservatorship when a senior is unable to act in his or her own best interests. And seniors do get divorced, so we do sometimes help with those situations. And sometimes a senior is facing an eviction, so they'll need help with that housing matter, or sometimes a senior is being abused or harassed by a tenant and will sometimes need to assist in evicting an abusive tenant. So those are the rare instances when we aren't on the eviction defense side, but it happens. And then we can connect individuals to mediation if there's a conflict in their life that they need help with from a third party neutral. We do have a bank of mediators who have agreed to do a very low cost mediation for clients. And sometimes that's really helpful to just get people to the table talking about the issue and, hearing both sides and coming to some compromise so that they can resolve the issue and move on and avoid court. And then, of course, simple estate planning. So wills, powers of attorney, and medical directives are often taken care of through our office. Those are common services. But really, our general philosophy for all of our cases is we like to start at the end. We want to just make sure that we are identifying the client's goals, that we have a clear understanding of what a successful outcome looks like for our clients, and identify the least disruptive path to achieving those outcomes. We don't want to go to court for court's sake. We don't want to pick battles just because we want to be big, tough lawyers. We want to absolutely identify the goals of the client and get there in the least disruptive manner possible. So talking about justice, we talk a lot about barriers to justice in our work. What are the things that are limiting people from accessing justice? So some seniors, they have a family lawyer or they have a son or a daughter or a family member who's a lawyer. And so they would absolutely, there's a percentage of seniors who absolutely know where they would turn for any legal advocacy or advice. Unfortunately, that's not the majority of the clients that we work with. There are language barriers. There are technology barriers. A lot of things are online these days, and people expect, and organizations are expecting people more and more to be able to fill out online forms. Sometimes technology is a barrier to that. Transportation, just physically getting to a place where you need to be able to meet with someone. Oftentimes meeting in person is ideal for some clients, and being able to get there, it can be tough. Not having money to be able to hire a lawyer, but also the economic barrier sometimes that we're seeing is people do not, some seniors are the only steady paycheck in their family. Their Social Security check is sometimes the only stable source of income. And so there are economic ramifications if they are going to be using any of those funds for purposes that are not benefiting people who are relying on their income. So in other words, there's just not enough money to go around. And then sometimes there's real fear and danger of seeking out resources. We unfortunately have seen cases where there is a real threat that if a senior does speak up and try to voice their concerns and try to seek help and uphold their rights, that there is an ongoing threat to their safety if they do so. And lack of awareness is a big reason why I'm so grateful to be talking with you today, because I want to make sure that as many people as possible are aware of the issues that we're seeing and are aware of where people can get help. So some major concerns that we're seeing, or the main concerns, I guess I should say, we basically have an old infrastructure for senior services, however globally you want to define that. The population, as we are all aware, the population, just the sheer number of seniors in our community is growing, has grown to such an extent that the infrastructure that was developed decades ago to be able to address the needs of seniors, assess and address the needs of seniors, is just no longer the right size for the number of seniors that we have. So another issue we're seeing is a power imbalance because, and I mentioned housing shortages here as well, further down the list, because one example of a power imbalance is that if someone doesn't feel that they have anywhere to go or anywhere else to live, they're oftentimes not going to voice their concerns. They're not going to speak up, for example, to the manager of a multi-housing apartment complex. If they had been on a wait list for 10 or more years to try to get into senior housing and finally do, if they have nowhere else to go, unfortunately, the the housing complex really can be seen as holding all the power in that relationship. Oftentimes, again, when people are being cared for by someone who is who they need to help them, and they don't feel like they have other options, it can limit someone's freedom to speak up when they don't feel like they're being treated fairly or they're being abused or taken advantage of. Obviously, mental health is a topic we talk about a lot in community meetings. We are seeing that there is definitely a need for mental health resources, mostly due to a feeling of isolation. We have a large population of adults who moved here decades ago and maybe didn't get married or didn't have children, or children don't live here. And so just lack of support, feeling isolated and feeling like no one really cares about them. And family conflict. Sometimes there's been a history of unhealthy relationships and there's some unresolved family conflict. And so that sometimes limits the willingness of some family members to step in and assist a parent in need because of prior unresolved issues in that family. So I talked about housing shortages because there's such a dire need for housing for seniors. Again, that can affect power equity. Budgeting, oftentimes buying something that makes you feel good can really help you get through the day, if that's a manicure or if that's a meal at a restaurant. And sometimes, unfortunately, the amount of money that we see some of our seniors living on, it can be after they pay their rent, it can be, a couple $100s to have to make it through the month. And that's hard. To be able to just make ends meet is very difficult for a lot of our clients. Hoarding is a big concern because if there are any impediments to entering or exiting a residence because of a long-standing hoarding issue, which is very much a mental health issue, oftentimes people can face an eviction because it is a health concern, is a safety concern, and so we're seeing housing instability due to hoarding. Pet care is a concern we're seeing with a lot of seniors who are found to be in violation of maybe a leash law because they really can't be jerked around by a dog on a leash, and just lack of resources for seniors who really benefit from the companionship of their pets. I mean, truly, it can be life-saving, that companionship that they have with their pets, and yet not having the resources to adequately care for pets, especially pets who do require exercise and frequent walking. And of course, an obvious concern is seniors are more and more in our economic, as we see an increase in economic instability, we see that seniors are more and more becoming targets for victimization because, as I said, sometimes they are the only source of a steady paycheck with their Social Security income. So that's sort of the not the very uplifting part of this presentation, but there is, sort of hope on the horizon. I do feel like we do have a wish list of sorts, a current needs assessment from Parachute to Aspen in terms of what are the needs of our seniors. These are all things that, I hear about that are on the horizon that are sort of hopefully coming to fruition in the near future. So a current needs assessment of, a thorough understanding of what the needs are and the deficiencies and gaps in resources for seniors from Parachute to Aspen. Accessible and affordable mental health resources is an obvious need. It just is not in the budget for seniors, and unfortunately not all mental health care providers accept Medicaid or Medicare for counseling. Senior multi-housing units, when we talk about long-term care facilities, assisted living and nursing homes, they all have resident councils. It's required by statute for them to have. It's absolutely best practices to have resident councils in those facilities, but it's not something that's required, unfortunately, at the apartment complexes for seniors. So there's just a lack of community input and a space and a forum for seniors to really be able to address their concerns and have their concerns heard by management and by those in charge of caring for the complex. A streamlined system for voicing concerns. So at the local level, county, state, and national level, truly, if you go to, like an apartment complex, for example, a senior housing complex, and if there's an elevator or a common area, you'll usually see the 6-step process to have, if you have a complaint, here's what you're going to have to do to try to get it addressed. And that's just really disheartening for a lot of people to see that there's this very long road ahead of you if you want to really get your concerns addressed. It's sometimes just disheartening and discouraging to see that there are so many steps to getting concerns addressed. We'd love to see and are aware of efforts and are supporting efforts for conflict resolution, training, and services from Parachute to Aspen. This would look like not only training management and training those who engage with seniors on a regular basis to be trained in conflict resolution, but to also provide that service if there are any conflicts that are ongoing in multi-housing units, for example, or neighborhoods, for seniors who are essentially dealing with the stress of an unresolved issue before people are going to be spending money going to court, to be able to have a space and a place to be able to resolve those issues informally, I think would go a long way to providing, to building community. And then, of course, more resources, that's an obvious, but scholarships, being provided for long-term care workers, for caseworkers, for, more trainings so that those organizations who serve seniors can better collaborate and share information and make sure that we are on the forefront of understanding the needs and issues facing seniors in our communities. And prevention. We all know an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they say. And I would just say that I hear on meetings a lot. I hear that the need will always exceed, or the demand will always exceed the supply. So we'll always have more need than there are services to provide. I think that we underestimate ourselves when we believe that this is true. And the reason is because we created the environment and the conditions in which there is such a high demand. And so I do believe we have more power than we realize in terms of being able to prevent the situations that create a life crisis for many folks. And I think that we can do more to, rather than putting a lot of funding and effort and energy into crisis management, and which is absolutely needed and necessary, but rather than focusing on dealing with the crisis, mostly trying to come together and find out how we can prevent the crisis is truly, I think, a very wise investment in our time and resources. So the good news is I really do feel we are of converging. I like to say, I want to encourage everyone on this call, or everyone who's listening, to really keep up the good work. And by that, I mean recognizing that your sphere of influence is real, that just inquiring into the well-being of a neighbor, doing what you can just to be there, just a form of support, just an ear to listen, can really be a release valve on escalating conflict and escalating crisis for our neighbors, for our friends, for our family. This requires, of course, sometimes having difficult conversations, sometimes stepping outside of our comfort zone. I always like to say, you know, please be curious, not combative. So, you know, ask questions, seek understanding. I can't overestimate how badly this is needed right now. We really do need one another, and it's if we're going to tackle the challenges that we're facing, if we're going to appropriately address the challenges that we're facing, it's going to take some time, but the more consensus we have, the less time it will take. And unfortunately, consensus is so difficult to achieve in a climate of polarization, in a climate when we are sort of gravitating toward the things that we want to hear and the people that agree with us, and not seeking dialogue with those who look different, sound different, talk different, think different, and you know, just don't have the same perhaps perspective and lived experience. So, you know, it's really not naive. I am by all means, I do not have rose-colored glasses, and I do understand the realities and the challenges that we face, but I really do have hope that we have such a high degree of need that there are in the meetings I'm attending, in the conversations I mean the staff of Alpine Legal Services and our board, we are seeing that there is it's almost like we're reaching this point, this tipping point, if you will, where we really are coming together and trying to tackle these issues in a more efficient way. So I am hopeful. And to mention our staff, by the way, I do want to say that we have an office in the Pickens County Courthouse. We have an office in the Garfield County Courthouse, and we have an office in Rifle. Beginning April 1st, actually, our office is moving from the co-work space in Rifle to Youth Zones. We're renting a space from Youth Zone in Rifle. But we have an incredible staff. We all, most of our staff is bilingual, bicultural, and all of our staff are at least Spanish proficient, so that we are in English and Spanish proficient, so that we are able to communicate with as many people as possible. And so I just want to give a shout out to our staff, our two full-time staff attorneys, Tony Mendez and Sam Crary, and Andrea, our paralegal, Trinity, our office manager, and Clarissa, our admin. We really do work hard to try to help. Our goal is, you know, really to ensure that when people reach out to us, they feel better, that they're glad they did. And if they aren't, we want to hear about it. So resources. These are my top 5. There are so many resources, but this is a good start. I would say alpinelegalservices.org, our website, if you go to resources and look under resources for older adults, it's a really good starting place for information that you may not have had prior awareness of. So I've been complimented by most recently someone in the Department of Behavioral Health, and I was, you know, she mentioned that she was going to reference our website because it had some really good resources. So I'm completely bragging about Alpine Legal Services webpage for resources. Please check out the resources for older adults on our website. The best resource that I've learned of in the past year or two has been Colorado Cross Disability Coalition. By the way, we're not affiliated with any of these organizations I'm about to mention, other than Alpine, obviously. But Colorado Cross Disability Coalition is definitely a resource I would advise everyone to know about. In fact, on May 17th, so if you go to their website, you'll just see a ton of information about how to, if you are disabled, or if you know someone who is disabled, I would highly encourage you to visit this website. And then on May 17th, they're having a webinar just about how to age in your home, how to be aware of resources to enable older adults to age where they are, and to stay engaged in their community. So I want to give a shout out for Colorado Cross Disability Coalition for really being helpful for a lot of our clients, knowing what benefits understanding the benefits they're receiving, understanding the benefits they're entitled to receive, and finding out how they can get more advocacy. National Center on Law and Elder Rights is another fantastic resource. I would encourage everyone to go to their website as well, ncler.acl.gov. Again, just a plethora of information about resources and ensuring that as many people as possible are aware of their rights so that they can uphold their rights and identify when others are not, or identify when others are having their rights infringed upon or violated. There are so many good Senior Law Day, as many of you may be aware, once a year we collaborate with Pitkin, Eagle, and Garfield Senior Services, as well as our regional area agencies on aging, to bring Senior Law Day to our region. And if you go to the Grassroots Community Network on YouTube, so if you go to YouTube and just type in Grassroots Community Network, it'll pull up, and then in there, so that will bring you to Grassroots Community Network's kind of YouTube page. And on that page, if you search Senior Law Day, if you click on videos and you search Senior Law Day, there are so many great videos. You could just spend, watch one a week. I mean, it's just so informative. I did have one individual mention recently wanting to know more about access to medical aid in dying. I did want to mention, for purposes of this webinar, that the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment has a lot of really good information about Proposition 106. So that's another good resource. In fact, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment had a lot of good resources for aging adults as well. So that's sort of my top 5 for now. But there's just so much good information out there. It's just important that people become familiar, because it's empowering. I mean, it's just really empowering to know your rights and to be able to identify for others, when someone's rights are being violated. And that's what we want. We want to be able to, the reason we want to uphold our rights is because we want to live in a society where the rule of law prevails. That's really what it boils down to. I mean, ensuring that our rights, that we're aware of our rights and that we uphold our rights is really, the bedrock of our democracy. And so, I can't understate it enough. Or I can't overstate it enough. Okay. So, by the way, I do want to selfishly mention that we are hiring. We are excellent long-term care ombudsman, and she is part-time. Her name is Candace Goodwin. She's fantastic. She's going to be with us through the end of May. And so we desperately want to make sure that we have some overlap and have a long-term care ombudsman lined up before the end of May. You can find out more about the long-term care ombudsman role on our website. You can email me, Jennifer@alpinelegalservices.org, to find out more. But essentially, a long-term care ombudsman is a person who advocates for residents of nursing homes and assisted living facilities. In this particular role is in Garfield County. There's a long-term care ombudsman for, these roles cover the state, but we manage the contract thanks to our area agency on aging. Actually, our area agency on aging is who funds our work for senior legal aid. That's the grant that allows us to provide this work. And they provide the funding for a long-term care ombudsman, an advocate for residents of long-term care facilities. So it's a very important role. And we hope that everyone can get the word out. If you know someone who's looking for a part-time job, maybe 10 hours on average a week, please have him or her get in touch with us so that we can make sure that they're certified to be able to pursue this job if they want to. So I think that's it. So I kind of went through things quickly. I would love to field any questions anyone might have. I can stop sharing now so that I can see if anyone has any questions in the chat, but otherwise, I'm just grateful to be talking with you. So thank you.
Alex, do you have questions in the chat? Alex? Well, I don't have access to see them. Maybe I do, but I don't know how. But I have a couple of questions for you, Jenny. Tell me about pets. I mean, how do you deal with that? So, this lady is, I don't know, 80 years old, and she has a 30-pound dog, and then she breaks her leg or she has a stroke, and, she doesn't want to give up the dog, but she can't get the dog outside. So the landlord is going to evict her because, the dog is just making a mess in the house and in the hallway, and maybe right outside the building is as far as she can get it. How do you deal with that?
So we would become aware of it. Unfortunately, Alpine Legal Services only becomes aware of a situation like that when there is a notice posted on the door. So suddenly there's this legal notice, and either the senior or a neighbor or friend, reaches out and says, we need help. Unfortunately, there are fewer and fewer options as time goes on. So it truly does take a village. A person who is in that situation, what we want to build is a community where we have support systems, where we really have, if this is, for example, a multi-housing unit, we want there to be a resource in that community where maybe someone else has a dog. Maybe that dog gets along with another dog, and we've got a neighbor who's willing to walk the dog. I mean, it really comes down sometimes to, can we get a dog walker?
But do you?
Yeah.
You've got 3 lawyers and a paralegal, and then some admin staff. So who goes and tries to find that lady a dog walker?
We are typically talking with the senior, and someone else is usually in the room. So we have like a neighbor or a friend or a family member who's saying, what are we going to do? And that's where we try to identify who are all the persons of influence in this person's world. Where's the apartment manager? Can we talk to the apartment manager or the landlord to discuss what options exist in this community? Every single case, I know it sounds like a completely typical lawyer answer, but it is every case. It
doesn't sound at all like that. It sounds like a social worker answer.
Well, we need more social workers.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, whether
we need more social workers.
Money for staff to, where a lawyer can turn that over to a social worker, and that would sound like, because it seems like a lot of your cases that really you're trying to build community supports, right? I mean, if you just go to court, eventually the landlord is going to get that person out. I mean, they have a right to do that. If the dog is ruining the house and it's a health hazard and the health department is there, that's a social service problem, right?
And our goal is always to ensure, to the extent possible, that the senior is aware of all legal options and is making the choice that is best for an individual's life. And so really that's a big part of our job, is to say, okay, here are all the options. We're going to try to find a dog walker, or we're going to try to line up, is there money for a dog walker? Is there a volunteer for a dog walker? I know this sounds simple, but it's really, that's what it comes down to. Because we're really trying to get a written agreement between the landlord and the tenant. That's what we're doing to avoid court. I mean, we're trying to get what, we call a stipulation in writing, so that we can say, okay, here's the agreement. The agreement is, a dog walker will be secured, the dog will be walked, there's going to be a in-home care provider that has agreed to resolve the issue of, or there's some other funding for resolution of replacement of the carpet, for example. We're going to get that addressed. We're going to reassess. We're going to come back in 30 days or 2 months to see how things are going. We're going to maybe have a mental health resource to be able to sort of navigate all that this person is going through. And perhaps it's this pet isn't right for my life. Maybe that's an option at that time. So we just really take each case, each individual situation, we assess it and try to, limit the amount of conflict and discomfort for the client. So but we need more. I mean, when I say we're on the verge of converging, I really do mean that organizations like High Country RSVP, when Mary Moon is talking about all the new programs that she's aware of, it's sort of like the buddy program for seniors, right? Those types of things that are coming and are kind of on the horizon, where we can have multi-generational partnerships, where we have people who are seeing an opportunity for being a volunteer dog walker, for example. I mean, so that's the thing, is that we have such a high number of cases that are like this, that we're getting to the point where we're saying, when we file our quarterly reports, for example, for the grants that we receive, these are the issues that when they say, where do you see a need? Where do you see funding, could be best used? These are the types of issues we're bringing up, and we're making some headway.
Good to hear. I was also interested in, see, if Alex is back, but I was interested in resident councils in assisted care and nursing homes. Sounds good on paper, but some of those folks are not in very good condition. How do they work, those resident councils? I don't mean theoretically, but on the ground, how do they actually work?
Well, they work really like any other leadership structure that you would see, right? I mean, you have people who want to be involved and engaged in their community, who have, either served in a leadership role throughout their life, or are now seeing, look, no one else is stepping up, so I'm going to be the one that's going to do it. So you have your leaders in these communities, and I wish Candace was here. She could speak more to the specifics of the resident council meetings, the frequency, and how that works. But typically our long-term care ombudsman, at least ours, is most of the time at those meetings, and is able to be the eyes and ears for ensuring that that it seems fair, that it seems like it's being run well, that it seems like the issues that are being raised are being addressed, and that there's participation. And so that's really why we have a long-term care ombudsman. It's someone who goes physically into the facilities. I mean, there were some times when we were able, where Candace was unable to, unfortunately, during COVID, but that time has since passed. And for the most part, she's able to actually be in the facilities and meeting with residents and able to see what's going on.
So she's also, you know, in addition to doing casework, she's kind of organizing these councils.
Not organizing the councils, but observing and ensuring that they're happening and then they're happening and according to the rules.
You know, the reason I, asked because you were talking about convergence, and I think what you're describing here is a very much down Carbondale Age Friendly Community Initiatives alley of people being involved and being, contributing to their communities wherever they are. And nursing homes, assisted living would be, one place, although we haven't done any work there, that doesn't mean we can't. So thanks, Jenny. I have a question here. I don't know if Alex is back, but I'll read it to you from JC. I would like my grown children to have access to my medical records, a la HIPAA. Each facility seems to have their own forms. I can't foresee where I might need care, especially say an auto accident, which may be out of state. Is there any nationally accepted form? Would a notarized letter authorizing access be honest? Honored, not honest, to be honest. Would it be honored?
Right. So if I'm hearing the question correctly, currently the way that this individual is able to have family access records is on a provider by provider basis. And so if that's what I'm hearing correctly, it sounds like the goal is for there to be a more general way that one or more family members can have access without knowing, without doing this sort of provider by provider, whack-a-mole, if you will. So I would say, let's have a conversation, because that I would want to ask more questions about who's the person you would want to designate. Essentially, that what we're talking about is a durable power of attorney and a medical directive that would allow someone to be able to have access to those records and be able to make decisions if needed, in case this person is incapacitated. And so I think that sort of overlaps with estate planning and making sure that the appropriate agents are in line to be able to get access to records as needed. The question specifically about a national HIPAA form, I would want to do a little research, because my guess is that there is a nationally recognized HIPAA authorization form, but as you said, each provider has sort of their own overlay of what they require. So there might be a portal, for example, that they want everyone to subscribe to be able to access records, or to elect individuals to be able to receive access to records. So that is a question that I want to get more information on. And so I would encourage this individual to call our main number. Say Jenny was talking on a webinar last night or yesterday or whenever, and she said that she would talk to me about a HIPAA form, and I will. So that's a good question in terms of where is the form that everyone can use for any provider, but also being able to ensure that certain family members do have global authority to intervene if necessary for medical reasons.
I can tell you, from my own experience, I was medical power of attorney for a friend of my mother's in New York, and I was living in California, and she got in a pretty bad accident and definitely could not act for herself. And we just faxed this to all the medical providers, and they honored it, and she got the care she needed immediately. It just, the power of attorney between New York and California did work very well.
Yeah. I think that would solve the problem, but I am curious to do a little more research on a specific form in addition to a power of attorney, which would also be helpful.
So, okay. Alex, do you have anything else?
Not from my end.
Well, again, I'm incredibly grateful to raise awareness of the issues that we're seeing from the civil legal aid perspective. And I hope that everyone who was able to join or is joining at a later date via a watching of the webinar is able to take at least one bit of information away that's going to be helpful for yourself or for another individual that you care about. And so we're glad to be here. We're glad to do this work. And I hope anyone who needs help will reach out for any seniors that need help.
Well, thank you, Jenny. It was very interesting to hear.
Jenny,
To see you. Nancy?
I was wondering, there's so much, such lack of assistance for people with low incomes to get proper mental health assistance. And I was wondering, do you see a lot of abuse of seniors, either physical, mental, or a situation in which they're not getting enough to eat?
We do see situations where there is often neglect, self-neglect, or neglect by others who are caring for an individual. We will refer those cases to Adult Protective Services. And I want to be clear that on our website under resources for older adults to be able to report abuse or neglect, there are resources to report abuse and neglect. And so we do see those situations. What will happen is the Adult Protective Services oftentimes will make a referral back to us and say, this person needs a guardian, or this person, needs a guardianship to be established or a conservatorship to be established. And so yes, unfortunately, we are seeing situations where neglect has been ongoing for many years, and it's very difficult to sometimes most of the time someone is not ready to see that there's a problem and they're not ready to get help for that problem. And so that is where planting the seed as early as possible to remove the stigma for getting mental health assistance is so important, especially when we just don't yet have we haven't removed the stigma for mental health. It's still seen by older adults sometimes as a weakness to need that help. Unfortunately, too often people just don't feel like that just wasn't how they were raised. They're going to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and they're going to deal with their issues, and they're going to buck up and keep on keeping on. But we really want to raise awareness that talking to someone, if you meet with a counselor, if you can get someone to talk to a counselor, that is often the first step for them to, after that experience, think, man, I do feel better. I really feel better. And then to keep doing that. And we want to just encourage people to talk to people. Right now, I Matter is a statewide platform for anyone under the age of 18 to get I think up to 6 free mental health sessions if you're under the age of 18. What we would like to see is that same type of program for anyone over the age of 60. Really to expand mental health resources across the state so that any senior who needs to talk to someone can talk to someone. I will say the crisis line for Colorado, the Colorado crisis line has been an invaluable resource for some of our seniors who do need to talk to someone and who are in a mental health crisis. And so there are resources locally that that we should be taking advantage of. We've found that Aspen Hope has been very helpful as well for local mental health resources. So but it just needs to be expanded, obviously, and there needs to be a greater awareness and a greater welcoming feeling for our seniors to feel like that is a resource that is perfectly acceptable to seek out and utilize and really and really take advantage of to improve, you know, someone's life situation.
I'm really looking forward to our series.
Me
We-
too.
You can,
Thank you
Seniors can-
so much. It was really helpful. I'm just kind of new to the area, and I really appreciate all the resources that you focused on, and would like to participate in that law day.
More to come.
Mhm. Great. Thanks again very much.
Thanks, Nancy.
I look forward to seeing you very soon.
You too.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think that's it for tonight. We have just a couple of minutes left in our hour. If you have any questions at this point, please use the chat or the Q&A before we leave for the evening. I do want to thank Ron and Nancy from Senior Matters and Jenny from Alpine Legal Services. And of course, be our interpreter tonight.
Yes, and I am sorry if I was talking quickly and using strange phrases. I didn't think about that, and I will do better next time.
You are wonderful. Okay, if we don't have any questions from our participants, we will be ending our evening. These videos are recorded, one in Spanish and one in English, and they'll be available through the library's social media soon and through Senior Matters as well. Any last comments, Ron, Nancy, Jenny, before we leave for tonight?
Thanks so much, Alex, for making this possible.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Senior Matters.
You're welcome.
Thank you and good night.